The uniform of the soldier is very, very important. If the soldier is not uniformed properly for the environment that he is in, he will not be an effective soldier. Now, there's another aspect to those uniforms and military uniforms, and that is style. Uniforms also are supposed to look nice, or at least that is the more traditional principle. While in World War II, practicality started to overcome fashion of uniforms, it still kind of lingered, and that wasn't really fully expanded until about Vietnam and slightly after Vietnam. And we see that within the uniforms. However, rather than service standard, and today we are going to be going over the uniforms of the Vietnam War, so testing them mainly for how they do in the environment they were supposed to be used in. Now, as y'all might know, Vietnam is very hot, and here in Texas we are blessed to have very similar weather, not only in temperature but also in humidity. So it's going to be a pretty fairly accurate test. Of course, I'm not in a tropical jungle or in the deltas, but we have pretty similar weather. So I will be going over the uniform itself, how they kind of evolved, and after I talk about the design of the uniform, we will go and test it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go run around in that uniform, come back, and tell you all how it went. We'll mainly be testing the heat, how these uniforms do in the heat and the humidity, and we'll talk a bit about practicality, but mainly this is going to be testing over heat. Now, we're also not just going to be going over the actual uniforms themselves with the fatigues, we'll also be going over boots, and you'll see them in a bit. I got some McNamara boots. They're a little small, but they do still kind of fit me. I'll be using those for the earlier uniforms, and then of course my jungle boots later, and we'll talk about the hat as well. Prior to the Vietnam War, this would be the uniform that our soldiers would have been using. Commonly called by reenactors as OG-107s, even though these are all OG-107, really known as utility fatigues. This was the standard uniform of the U.S. Army. Right after, during middle of Korea, it was when it was first adopted, which is the pattern I'm wearing, the first pattern. This I think was adopted in 52, if I remember correctly, and it would evolve to this, the third pattern, by the early 60s. And this was the uniform that was used by National Guardsmen, soldiers stationed in Europe, other parts of northern parts of Asia, and this was still used for a very long time until the 80s. Now, a lot of troops in Vietnam, especially the first troops landing in Vietnam, did land in Vietnam with these. Our advisors, which this is actually kind of patched up for, besides these aren't accurate, but they first used these in Vietnam as well, and they commented on how hot it was. So this is, I think it's still made of the herringbone frill style of weave for the cotton, which is from World War II, the HBT uniform. It is a very thick cotton, and the design of the uniform is really interesting. You'll see that it only has two breast pockets, which are fairly sized. However, there's no bottom pockets because, as I am wearing it, this uniform is meant to be tucked into the pants. The pants themselves do have two large pockets in the front and two pockets in the rear, but that is it. There's no cargo pockets. These are also still meant to be very form-fitting. This is kind of your layover from the fashion. The uniform must look nice. These are very similar to the wools from World War II, the wool shirt and wool pants that were worn during World War II, and also very similar to the HBT uniform in that regard. Kind of a mix of both, really, if you really think about it. And that's what it was. It was that base uniform. You could wear your field jacket over it, the M65 field jacket, which had more pockets and was more for practicality than uniform. But this still was supposed to be a nice looking uniform. But as you can see, it's really not all that practical, but it still has some practical. Like the pockets are still fairly large. But this uniform, the advisors talked about how it was too hot for the jungle, hot weather and jungle conditions they were facing in Vietnam. And so they would start on the jungle fatigues. But before we go to that, we will go test these out in the field. And before we go test them, I also want to talk about the headwear and footwear that these men would have went into Vietnam with. So for the hat, it would be the baseball cap, as it's nicknamed, or the hot weather cap. We did have a other cap style that you'll see in Korea that has flaps on the sides for cold weather, but obviously that's not suitable. So this is pretty much just a baseball cap, pretty much, with a stiffener in the front to make it look nice and pretty. These aren't horrible in the heat, but they're still not that great. They do have drain holes on them, but even then they don't really, or not drain holes, ventilation holes. However, those ventilation holes aren't the best at ventilating, to be perfectly honest. And then for boots, I'll put up photos, but I'm wearing them. They would be the McNamara boots. These come from the paratrooper boots, very similar in construction, and the jungle boots would come from these, obviously, but we'll talk about that later. These are an all-leather black boot. They get laced all the way up. They do not have drain holes, and they still have the old World War II diamond-style sole. These were told to be very hot. The sole was told to be pretty bad and slippery in the thick, dense jungles, and so the army, of course, would look towards a new boots as well. But let's go see what those advisors were talking about, and let's go see what a lot of those first soldiers who landed in Vietnam wore into Vietnam, and let's go see how it does in the heat. Alright, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to go run around my property with the mic, probably add some epic music or whatever, I don't know. It might be a little cringy, but we're going to go test it out. I'm already sweating in this. This is quite hot already, but I'm going to go take a run. Here we go, on the jog. Oh, goodness. Okay. So, it's pretty windy, so that wasn't that bad. However, my boots are not dirty, which I kept clean. It's gonna be great. I can already feel the heat in and around my belt and around my jacket due to it being tucked in. It's not letting a lot of airflow through. It looks nice, don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful looking uniform. But man, it's also important to note that this uniform was not made for hot weather environments specifically, really. The HVT uniform as well from World War II was not made for hot environments. It was made as a work uniform, which this is as well. It was just used in hot environments because it was better than wearing the wools. But this is not made for hot environments, and you can really tell. A lot of guys in Vietnam, you'll see, especially like 1st Air Cav in the Drang Valley, they wouldn't tuck their shirts in, they would just let them loose to let that air flow through, which is way better than what I'm doing here. I'm already pretty sweaty. It's honestly worse standing out here than running, because running I had that breeze. Standing here where there's no wind, this is honestly worse. The hat is not very cool. My head is very hot. My feet are also very hot, especially as the boots are all leather, and that sun is really baking that black leather and making it really hot in these shoes. The pants aren't letting too much air in. It's of course better than wool, but man, you know, it's still pretty warm, and I can definitely see what these advisors meant. Honestly, the problem isn't really running around in combat. Really, the problem would be kind of just standing still like I am right now. This would be where this uniform really fails in hot weather, especially this kind of heat. Especially if you're wearing equipment as well. This sucks. It's not that breathable. It's more breathable than the wool, but still not the most breathable. And just its design and how it's meant to be worn, it's not going to let all that much air flow through. So let's go move on to the first pattern. As you can tell, this uniform's hot. I'm even inside, I'm still fairly hot and warm, and I'm very, very sweaty already, and I was not out there long. I was probably out there for like 5 minutes at most. I've been out in the heat here in Texas with OG 107s on for a lot longer, and so trust me when I say this uniform is really hot, especially with this kind of heat. But that was not the only concern with these fatigues. The other thing was pocket space. Like I said, the jacket only has 2 pockets, 2 breast pockets, and the pants only have those 2 big pockets in the front and 2 rear pockets, which aren't very big. And with the boots, of course, there was a lot of issues. Um, the all leather would rot a lot easier in the jungle. When water got in, it was staying in, and it was very wet in Vietnam. A lot of these times, these guys were going through creeks, rice paddies. If they were in the deltas, it was just swamp, pretty much jungle swamp, and the diseases as well would also not help with that. And it rained a ridiculous amount, so you were gonna be wet in Vietnam. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Um, So they would decide to move on to a new uniform. And I'm going to try on both the first pattern jungle fatigues and the third patterns, because there is some slight differences that I do want to talk about with the heat as well. So these are the first pattern jungle fatigues. This would be kind of the answered prayer to the complaints about the OG-107s. As you can see, the design is a lot different. They have 4 pockets now instead of the 2 breast pockets. There's 2 buttons as well for better durability. They also are actually wider. They have these slits with extra fabric so they can actually puff out a little more, so they can hold a lot more. They also have drain holes for when it gets wet to let the water out. The whole jacket, main thing, is it's made of a lighter poplin cotton rather than the HBT style cotton. They also added epaulets, which are really more of a fashion thing, but they can be used practically. Along with the other fashion things, you have side adjustment straps to make it tighter around your body to look nicer, and they still have the exposed buttons. One other thing that's kind of not the best is they have a gas flap. So if you see this piece of fabric, it goes all the way down and through the other side. And this is meant for if you come under a gas attack, it will not let gas leak into the uniform as well. That would actually trap heat a lot more. The pants also have them. They have a gas flap here as well, as you can see. The pants were a big difference. They added these big cargo pockets on the side, as well as keeping the big front pockets and the rear pockets. There's also a button fly, which they would eventually change to zipper, which the OG-107s had as well. Some of them had zippers, but it's mainly the later third pattern ones. So overall, large improvements. This is a way better uniform. It was a lot cooler and a lot more breathable than the OG-107s. Had a lot more pocket space, so you can carry a lot more things. This was pretty heavily inspired, pretty much copied off of the paratrooper uniform from World War II. If any of you guys are World War II buffs, you can see that. But overall, this was a really, really good upgrade. However, it was not best, and there were some improvements that need to be made, which we will go over here in a bit. Before we move on, I want to just quickly talk about the differences between the boots and how the boots changed. So here we have our McNamara boots. These have the diamond sole pattern. They're all leather. The first pattern jungle boot, which I have a reproduction here of, which I will not be using because these are not the best, and the soles are kind of falling off. I would use this for this challenge, or this video, but I don't really want to ruin these anymore. But as you'll see, they have added drain holes here at the bottom to drain out any water that gets in the boot. Again, Vietnam and most tropical areas are very, very wet. The sole has been updated to the Vibram sole, which is a lot grippier than the diamond sole and works a lot better. And just in general, it's a better sole. That didn't really have to do much with jungle stuff in jungle warfare, but yeah, as you can see, they also went to a more canvas design, one for heat, but also it's also cheaper to make. As you can see, the first pattern though still keeps a lot of leather. It keeps the leather back strap the exact same, and still has leather at the top. Overall, though, these are a better improvement over the McNamara boots, and were a lot better for jungle warfare and generally just better combat boots. Alright, now this is how some men actually came over to Vietnam. Like, for example, First ID came over a little later in 1965, and they actually arrived with first pattern jungle fatigues. They still had the McNamara boots and would still wear them for about a year until 1966. It wasn't until later half of 66, early 1967 that jungle boots really started becoming the main popular thing. We still have the OG-107 hat, the baseball cap, hot weather cap. I'm going to go run in the more front of my house because I don't really want to get my boots all that dirty and wet. These are nice boots, and I don't really want to ruin them all that much. I will clean them, of course, but you know, if I don't really have to clean that much, that's better. But yeah, already this feels a lot nicer. This uniform is meant to be a lot baggier and a lot more airflow, as you can see. However, it's still fairly hot, and I'm gonna go run, and I'll talk to you all once I get back. So. That's a little unfair, since I was already pretty hot the first one, but it hasn't time to cool off. Whew, it's better. Again, maybe standing here is going to be the big thing. It's actually going to be, like, sucking. The one thing that's good about these fatigues is you can roll the sleeves a lot easier. They have buttons at the bottom that allow you to roll the sleeves. You can unbutton them and roll the sleeves up. The first pattern, OG-107s, did not have any buttons on the cuffs. The later patterns did, which you could theoretically do it too, but you don't see a lot of guys doing that. But these jungle fatigues, guys roll up the sleeves a lot, and trust me, I'll do that with my third patterns. Actually, no, I won't, because that's unfair. But when you roll it up, it does feel so much nicer. I've rolled up these sleeves, I've rolled up those sleeves. The only thing is bugs, which is why these are still long sleeves. It is nicer though. It's still fairly hot, but overall it's not that bad. One thing to note with the boots is they are bloused, and they should be bloused. Most guys bloused them, especially early in the war. Later in the war, there's a little less discipline. There's photos of guys who, I don't know if they have their boots bloused. They probably have them either very poorly bloused or just tucked in their pants, which you're not supposed to do. But there's some photos where I'm pretty sure they could do that. But most photos you see, guys are blousing their boots with blousing bands. These pants actually do come with built-in blousing bands, but no one really uses them. Oh, siren. It's an EMS. Uh-oh. But, gosh, it's hot. But this uniform it is nicer. And with the boots, also, now with the boots also, you do also see guys who just didn't blouse at all, and they just kind of rolled their the cuffs of their pants up, which is also a lot nicer than blousing them. Blousing them does make it hot. It doesn't really allow airflow. But this is a lot nicer to wear than the OG-107s or the utility fatigues. So, all right, let's go to the third patterns. Now, as you see, the first patterns are better, but they're still not great. And so there would be improvements done. Now, I don't have second patterns yet. I do plan on getting them. I have a video planned for that too. Which all the second patterns did was they covered up the buttons, as these exposed buttons get snagged and get ripped on the immense amount of foliage that is in Vietnam. They kept the gas flap, they kept the epaulets, they kept the side adjustments. Really, the third patterns are a big, big improvement. The later second patterns are very similar to the third patterns. They get rid of the epaulets, they get rid of that side adjustment, so it's a lot baggier and a lot more breathable. They cover up all the buttons, just like after the second patterns did, and they get rid of the gas flap, for most importantly. They also go, I don't know if the second started, but they went to a zipper fly on the pants. You still have the big cargo pockets and all that, so a lot of storage space. These are an original set, which I don't know. The first patterns I'm wearing are reproductions from wars, and they're really good. But these originals feel lighter of a cotton than the first patterns I'm wearing. I don't know if it's actually something that was truly like from the patterns, or if that's just because these are repros and these are originals and these are used and worn. But most third patterns I see do tend to feel a lot lighter of a cotton than the first patterns, which they could be. I'm not for certain if they are. But one thing that's big with the third patterns is the introduction of ripstop in 1968. This would allow for prevention of rips. When a hole does form, the stitching pattern prevents it from expanding. And it does actually do a fairly good job of that. It stops the rips, which is hence the name. This uniform would be used for a very long time after Vietnam, up until even the 80s, really. And it would inspire, of course, the design for the M81 BDUs, which eventually evolved to the uniform we have today. Another big thing that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to wear for wearing the Thoroughbreds, is the introduction of the boonie cap. Now, this comes from the Daisy May cap in civilian hunting, like duck hunting caps and stuff like that. It's a lot nicer. It has a wider brim. I have my Ertl one as a representation. Most of them are already green. You do see these ones being used by standard infantry late in the war. A lot of them use camo, especially for Eddie. It's got a wider brim to help block the sun. It's way better than this. And the drain holes are bigger and nicer. It's also got loops for putting camouflage foliage in. Now, this would ultimately replace this cap in field. In practice, not really. This was still used, especially back at home in the United States and in Europe. And it would be kind of like the uniform infield dress cap in a way. But the boonie would take over. And by the 80s, the boonie cap is a pretty standard issue, and a lot of guys are actually using it instead of these pretty much anywhere that's hot. Most of the time, you're not seeing it in the United States. They're still using the caps. But the cap they make after this for the 1980s is a lot nicer of a design. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Vietnam. So I'll be testing out the boonie cap. And last but not least, we have the boots. So how the boots change is pretty interesting. This is a third pattern jungle boot, which I know it's not very easy to see. I'll put the photo as well. And you have your first pattern. It keeps the drain holes, keeps the design. The third patterns would eventually switch to the Panama design, which is a lot better than the Vibram design. It got rid of a lot of the excess leather and added nylon. That was mainly with the second pattern. And then the third pattern's big change is the nylon reinforcement strap right here at the ankle, which the first and second patterns do not have. This is pretty nice, and these are really nice boots. They're really great combat boots, and these would be used until the 80s too, even some until the 90s by Marines and other units like that. So yeah, let's go see how they do. And this is the epitome of the jungle combat uniform, jungle fatigues, third pattern jungle fatigues. This is way nicer than both the previous uniforms. It's a lot lighter. I don't know if the lightness between the third patterns and the first patterns is actually kind of how it actually genuinely was, or if that's just because these are originals and those are reproduction. However, this is way nicer. It's a lot cooler. Actually, not that bad out here. So yeah, and the boonie hat is a lot nicer. It provides a lot more shade than the baseball cap, and it so circulates air a lot better than the baseball cap. This is what most soldiers wore throughout Vietnam, as this was adopted in 1967. The third pattern, of course, adopted in 1968, and these would see action throughout the rest of the war. These are really nice. I really like my third patterns, and I really do think these are the perfect jungle combat uniform. So I'm gonna go run around and we're gonna go test it out. So I'll see y'all in a bit. Okay. All right. So these are better. I'm already not as sweaty, not as hot, and I'm getting more shade in my face, which is nice. Do not get me wrong, these are still really hot. The boots, even being canvas, still get really hot, and your feet will get really hot, mainly because the socks are white. But this is way better than the other two uniforms. It's a lot cooler. The bagginess is really nice. It allows airflow. Not having that gas flap is really nice because it actually allows a lot more air in, and it allows you to cool off a lot better. Most guys, especially late war, started ditching the tops. Of course, like I said, most guys rolled up their sleeves. These guys are trying to stay cool as much as possible. But the pocket space is really nice, and as a combat uniform, it's really good. And this is when we get away almost completely from the uniform has to look nice. Don't get me wrong, it's still a nice looking uniform, but it is far cry from the OG-107s or even the first pattern jungle fatigues, which still have the epaulets and the nice side adjusters. Those look really nice. This is more rugged looking, but it is so much more practical, and the soldiers loved it so much more, and I love it so much more. I really do love the third pattern jungle fatigues, especially here in Texas. mean, this is the uniform I wear the most. My third patterns, my Ertl ones, all my third patterns, this is the uniform I wear the most outside of reenacting. When it's, especially in the summer, one, it's hot almost all year round pretty much. But these are really great to wear in the heat, especially if you take off the top and you're just wearing the pants. It's actually really nice. These pants allow airflow and allow air in really nicely. And overall, this is a really, really good uniform. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope y'all enjoyed watching me suffer. I thought this was kind of cool. I know this is a little different than how I do most of my videos, but I kind of want to start doing a little more generic history videos. Kind of just because there's things I want to talk about, and I think y'all might like them, and I need content. But of course, more impression videos are soon to come, and that will still be the main focus of my YouTube channel, will be impressions and reenactment videos. But these kinds of videos will also crop up here and again, just because I think they're cool and I enjoy doing them. So hope you all enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time.